And our consciousness is able to access the entire universe if we train our consciousness to meditate, to focus. And once we do that, then great truths revealed to us. This is great for people who work in business and in finance, right? Because it allows them to make better business decisions, right?
So wait,
Because
hold on.
as
So let
yes,
me get this clear. So you're saying that there are people in positions of
yes,
power and they find themselves attracted to this way of thinking because they think hard and they meditate and they unlock the download and the upload that you're getting because this allows them to make better market decisions and make more money.
that's right.
All right. I'm now going to be talking to Professor Jiang, ladies and gentlemen. Hold on. Hello, Professor Jiang. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Wow. Okay. What
Can
an
you hear me?
honor. What an honor to have you
Oh,
here.
no, it's
A
a pleasure.
big time fan, first time listener. Hold on. I'm doing a real time live production right now. So it's going to take a little bit
No worries.
to size you up, to fix you up on the screen. But I
Okay.
know that you are now also doing live broadcasts because I saw you talk about, the trials of trying to communicate to an audience in real time and how difficult it is. So now,
You need about four brains to do it properly.
thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
It's the ADHD that I have. For your title, what would you like?
You can just call me Jiang if you want.
Okay, I'm going to say Professor Jiang, and then I'm going to
Okay.
say future predictor, predictive history.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. So, Professor Jiang, you have been on the broadcast of numerous academics and also Sneeko, who is not
Sure. Sneak
necessarily an
as well. Yes.
academic, but
Right.
um,
Right.
but you've had conversations with the likes of Dugan and many others. Very excited to have you here. You did an interview with Breaking Points. Longtime fan of your work. Let's get right into it. What's the next prediction? What's coming up?
My next prediction, my big prediction is that I think Trump will get a third term.
Okay, that's a little
Yeah.
wild. All right. What makes you say that?
Well, first of all, he and his family have been stealing billions of dollars. That's a lot of corruption, and it's really unprecedented. So if he were to leave the office in 2028, you would imagine the first thing that any new administration would do is conduct an investigation because it'd be very popular among the American people. I also live in China, so I know how these things work. Basically, when someone gets in office and he's behaving like a tyrant, it usually means he's a tyrant. And it usually means he has no intention of ever leaving office. So I think that given his behavior, I think Trump is intent on a third term. Uh, so then the question then is, would he get a third term? And when Zelensky visited the White House, there was a White House gaggle, and basically, the reporter asked Zelensky, "Hey, why haven't you had an election for the past 4 years? And you should be out of office." And Zelensky is like, "Well, we're at war, so we suspend the Constitution." And Trump was like, "Wait, you can do that?" And then Zelensky was like, "You like that, don't you?" And yeah, that's what he might do. He could also run as a VP and have his son, Don Jr., at the head of the ticket. And then when he wins, when they win by cheating, they can, his son can abdicate and he can be the president again.
So there's one
Uh,
complication there. It's actually
right?
unconstitutional for him to be the vice president. Like right now, Barack Obama couldn't run as a vice president because he's already carried out his 2 terms. Because
That is
so
that is up to
there's a there's a constitutional hurdle there, but maybe he can climb it. I don't know.
debate because if you talk to any law professor, he or she will tell you that it's unconstitutional. It violates the spirit of the Constitution. But the problem with the Constitution is it doesn't state explicitly that that you can't do that. Because what the Constitution says is that no vice president shall be elected, but the vice president is not elected. He's part of the ticket. So it's ultimately up to the Supreme Court to decide what this Constitution says, right? So
Yeah.
I would debate that they will take this to the Supreme Court.
Well, yeah. I mean, the vice president has the same qualifications as the president. Like, vice president also has to be like over the age of 35, for example. Like, you can't have like a 30-year-old VP on the ticket.
That is the
But
spirit of the
but then
Constitution.
again, who knows? This
That's the
is
spirit of the Constitution. I agree
yeah.
with you. And all law professors will tell the same thing. But again, it's not in the letter. It's not explicit. And so they can take to the Supreme Court. And ultimately, 3 of the 9 justices were appointed by Trump. He'll probably get another one by the end of this year, possibly next year. So there'll be 4 appointed by Trump when this case goes to Supreme Court. But it'll be great for us because it'll be Barack Obama versus Donald Trump in 2028.
Okay, you said us. You're in the tank for the Democrats. Is that what it is? Am I getting that right?
No, I know. What I meant. Of course I'm being ironic. What I meant is like just a general spectator.
No.
It's
Okay.
like it'll be like the WWE, right? The main event,
Okay.
the greatest clash in American politics. Barack Obama versus Donald Trump. Donald Trump's been waiting for this ever since what 20. When did he go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner and Barack Obama made fun of him? I mean, he's been
It's like
relishing this moment for a long, long time.
2015, 2014, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. No, he's been relishing this moment for a long time.
They're saying 2011 in my chat. Professor Jiang, is it possible to raise your volume on your end? I tried to do it on mine, but it's already maxed out just a little bit from your
Okay,
microphone
sorry,
because you're a little bit
So
quiet.
yeah, sorry. I'll put my mic closer to my. Yeah. All right.
There's no
Is
way
this
to
better?
crank up the volume on your end through the Zoom, maybe.
Yeah. Let me try.
It sounds
This is
fine, is
what.
what chatters are saying now, but it's crazy because, and I'm sure you've already gotten a little taste of this when you were also live. They always complain. You know what I mean? They always complain, and then
Yeah.
they're like, and then they complain nevertheless, even when you fix it.
Yes. Okay. So, is this better now?
It's a little bit better. I'll just lower my own volume to adjust it to yours so
Okay.
that people can, people can lower their volume or increase their volume. I think we should be
Okay.
good
All
this
right.
way.
Okay.
All
All right.
right. So getting back to it, so you're famous for your predictions. You use game theory. A lot of people have called you out on it. I don't fully understand how game theory factors into your predictions.
Sure.
Do you mind elaborating on how game theory factors into your predictions on geopolitical events?
Right. So my big thing is that the world is a game, and we can treat nation states as players in this game, and each nation state has a distinct personality, determined by its geography and by its history. And this distinct personality determines how it interacts with the world. So, for example, the United States is particularly aggressive. China is not aggressive, and ultimately, each player is going to engage in its optimal strategy, right? So rather than like look at what people say, look at what people do, just think about like if this game were to continue, what is the optimal strategy? And then the player would adapt this optimal strategy over time, right? So if you were to go back, 2 years ago, and you were to survey American politicians and Donald Trump, would you go invade Iran? They'd be like, of course not. That's insane. Why would we do that? But they end up invading Iran because it is at this point in American history the optimal strategy in order to maintain American hegemony around the world. So that's a brief introduction to game theory.
Okay, so part of that equation in your assessment, because you correctly predicted that Trump's going to win the election. There were some incorrect predictions in there. I believe you said Nikki Haley could potentially be
Sure.
Trump's vice president, but then you also landed on
Right.
JD Vance as well. There was one thing that stuck with me though, where you said that America was going to go up the escalation ladder with Iran. America was going to lose the war to Iran, but in the process of doing so, that there would be troop movements that from the rest of the region would join in on this battle and
Yes.
militarily invade Iran. Boots on the
Yes.
ground military warfare. Part of that, you said Saudi Arabia would amass 200,000 plus troops.
Yeah.
Where, if you don't mind me asking, where did you get that number? Because I remember looking up the number of troops that the Saudi government has, and as far as like combat troops, it was nowhere near 200,000. Which,
Right.
of course,
Well,
I don't even think Saudis would ever allow Saudi nationals to go and wage war, as they were thoroughly defeated militarily in Yemen by the much smaller, much more ascetic band of troops backed by Iran, the Ansar Allah movement, the Houthis.
okay. So to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't do thorough research when I came up with these numbers. When I give lectures, I'm trying to create a narrative that sort of captures the essence of what's happening. And so my larger argument is that America will go in a coalition, and this coalition will make up the bulk of its invasion force. And we're already seeing this transpire where there's a crackdown in Iraq. And so what a lot of people believe is that the prime minister is trying to crack down on the Shia militias in order to pave the ground for a invasion from Iraq, right? And if that were the case, then you can see Iraqi militiamen joining in. You can see the Kurds joining in as well. So my larger point is that it'd be a broad coalition with the Americans providing aerial support and special forces and intelligence and command and control. But the bulk of the invasion force would be multinational. And you could also see some Japanese and Korean forces in there as well.
Wow, you think Japanese and Korean forces would also participate in a ground invasion of Iran?
Well, it's in the benefit of America to make it as international as possible. And ultimately, the Strait of Hormuz were to continue to be closed, then South Korea and Japanese economies were tank, right? So they have a vested interest in sending forces. They may not send a lot, but again, I think Trump will be very interested in having this as broad a coalition as possible, just for domestic political purposes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the Japanese self-defense forces, especially considering that that's like definitely a bridge too far for many, even in Japanese society. As far as I understand Japanese politics, I mean, they don't really have a real military. I mean, it's unconstitutional for them to even have a military technically.
They
And what?
have Sorry, they have the best blue water navy in East Asia. I can see them sending ships to the Strait of Hormuz to support the attack. And also, right now, Japan is rewriting the constitution, and they are remilitarizing because they recognize that as the United States retreats from East Asia, then they need to basically be able to defend themselves against Chinese aggression.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind me asking. So you live in
Sure,
Beijing,
sure.
but you're on the
Yeah,
English side of the internet. So, and I've been to Beijing. I don't know if you're aware. I've been to China. It was quite the
yeah,
controversial trip, as a matter of fact, because I don't have, unlike many Americans, I don't have an immediate hostility towards China. I think it's just another country existing in the world. And as you also correctly pointed out, they don't have a lot of inherent hostility towards other countries in general. They just have,
sure.
they exercise their self-interest, and their self-interest revolves around maintaining stability around the world. And even simply saying that out loud and correctly pointing to that is seen as an unforgivable sin here in the United States of America. But I want to hear about your perspective on China a little bit, given as you're someone who went to college here in the United States of America, I believe, right? You went to Yale,
Yeah, I
right?
was at Yale.
Yeah,
Yes,
you went to
unfortunately,
Yale.
yes.
You had an English degree from Yale, and then you also you worked as a journalist in China for a little bit, and then there was a little bit of controversy. I think you were working. I mean, this is just off your Wikipedia page. You can elaborate. There was you were working with a American outlet, I think, or an
Yeah,
international or Western
PBS.
outlet.
Yeah, PBS.
Oh, you were working with
Yeah.
PBS. Okay, cool. And then and what was that about?
Yeah, so I was working as a freelance journalist for the first couple of years. I was in China, and I was working for the Chronicle of Higher Education, um, Asia Week, some American publications. And then PBS came into town, and this was a time when China was applying to join the WTO, the World Trade Organization.
Uh huh.
And there were a lot of worker protests around the country due to the restructuring of the state-owned enterprise system, right? A lot of people were losing their pensions, a lot of people were losing their livelihoods. And so they sent me to the northeast of China, a place called Daqing, to film a worker protest. And the moment I arrived, I was arrested because there were a lot there, as you know, in China, there's a huge police presence everywhere. Like lots of plainclothesmen, a lot of spies. So I was arrested the moment I was there, and I was put in a hotel for 48 hours. And I was interrogated, and I was forced to sign a confession saying that I was working illegally in China as a journalist, which I was. I was working in China illegally as a journalist. I had a crime here. And so
Sorry.
why is that funny?
I just like that you're so honest about it. Or you're like,
Yeah, no.
you're like,
It's illegal to work in China as a journalist. And then I was deported, but I was not charged with a crime. There's a difference, right? So I
uh-huh.
was deported and I was allowed back in the country anytime I wanted. But they wanted to deport me in order because I mean, like you can imagine when a journalist gets arrested in China, like when you got stopped at Tiananmen Square, that's big international news, right?
Yeah.
So
I
they
mean, even
the
even when I
journalists,
got detained for like 3 seconds at Tiananmen
that's
Square, that
exactly
was all over Western newspapers. They're like, "Oh, the communists have arrested him." I mean, it wasn't, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, they said you can come back anytime, but we have to deport you because you're getting too much attention. And so, after a year, I was trying to write a book, didn't really work out, and I was trying multiple uh, possibilities, but then I ended up going back to China to do documentary filmmaking. And then I worked for the United Nations of Afghanistan, and then after that, I started to work in education reform in China. I built a couple of schools in China that were pretty successful, and then I got fired because I'm a tyrant. I have a certain way of doing things. I have a certain way of educating students, and it didn't really align with Chinese culture and Chinese tradition. I want to teach critical thinking. I want to teach the Socratic method, and they just wanted kids to get into Yale and Harvard. And I was doing that, but they didn't want the education reform, and so I was fired from my position. I wandered around China for the next 10 years before I met my wife, and that's what really changed my life. After I met my wife, we had 3 kids, and so I needed stability in my life, and so I started to go work at a private school, and that's when I started to film my lectures. So I was teaching both geopolitics, game theory, as well as great books, Homer, Dante, Plato, and that's what made me popular online.
I've seen the videos. So the videos that you have on the internet, you actually have students in the room with you. Like that's a lecture
Yeah,
from high school.
one,
I assume
but,
is
but
it
I
is it high school?
it's a high school and I have like one student in the class. Yes,
You have
as
one
many,
student.
sometimes two. You know,
Okay.
sometimes if I get lucky, I get two, but yeah, usually one student in the classroom. Yes.
And what's the like I've looked into the website a little bit and I feel like it's one of those schools where it's like the goal is to try to get these kids to like American college, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah, yeah. So we are a private school. I've left the school, by the way.
Oh, you
But
have. Okay.
I have left the school to pursue other possibilities. But it's a private school. It's trying to get Chinese kids into American schools, American colleges. But as you can appreciate, a lot of these kids are there because they failed out of the Chinese public school
Yeah.
system. The Chinese public school system is very, very rigorous. It's intense, and a lot of kids, I would say the vast majority of kids, flunk out because they develop a lot of depression, they develop psychological issues, and these parents are rich enough to send their kids to America. So I deal with like rich dumb kids.
Yeah. That's what a lot of Americans don't realize this, but yes, the children of rich kids in other countries with like a public education system oftentimes will send as a secondary option their children to private school in America because it's much harder to get into the best schools, the top schools in China. Same thing with Turkey as well. I'm a
Sure.
dumb rich kid who had to go to private school in high school because I couldn't get into any of the good schools because I didn't fail, but it's just like I wasn't competitive enough in 8th grade in my test results.
You know,
And
and the grind starts at like age 2 or 1. You know, it's crazy what the parents will do to make sure their kid succeeds on the national entrance examination. I mean, like these kids are doing cram school at age 3 or 4. They're learning math, they're learning vocabulary, they're doing a lot of sports, just swimming. You know, I have 3 kids, and it's impossible for us to raise a family because there are no we our kids can't find any friends. Everyone's too busy studying, and you know, we are very progressive with our kids. We want them to be happy. And so all other parents look at us and think we're like, you know, just serial killers, you know, like cannibals. Like how could you do this to your child? Don't you know, like at age 6 or 7, your child's future is already determined? Are you happy with your child being, you know, like a drug addict for the rest of his life? We get a lot of stares, and we people talk about us behind our backs all the time.
that's wild. But you know, so what's your plan then? Are you planning on bringing them to the West, or are you planning on raising them in Beijing?
Yeah, so what my long-term plan is to start foundation schools around the world and I want to promote a new model of education. And there'll be 3 major pillars to this new model of education, and they are great books. I think that in the digital age, it's now the most important thing to read books, especially the great books, right? Homer, Dante, Plato, Shakespeare. The second pillar is game theory, like teaching you how to understand geopolitics, how to understand current events, and understand the social forces that determine these events. And the third is their cult, religion, right? So I'm interested in teaching the Kabbalah. I'm interested in teaching Sufism, Vedic philosophy, Taoist philosophy, because I feel that, you know, if you really want to understand the world, you need to understand religion, because the reality is that most people are religious and people take their religion seriously. And I think that it's very hard to understand what's happening in the Middle East unless you look at it from an eschatological lens. Unless you appreciate that there are crazies in the American government, be like Peter Hegseth, who believe they're actually crusaders, that they are gonna go and bring in the second coming of Jesus. A lot of these Zionists are driven by end times eschatology as well. They really believe that they are going to build a third temple, and this is going to bring back sorry, not bring back, but like usher in the coming of the Messiah, and then God will bring heaven to earth. They all believe this, and unless you really appreciate this, it's very hard to understand how the world works.
I mean, I believe in dialectical materialism. My understanding of the world revolves around. In some ways, it's not dissimilar to game theory, self interest on the basis of class, and how societies are organized around the means of production, and everything is downstream from that. But I do think that there are some, you know, spiritual and ideological ways of thinking that might lead people astray. But I think ultimately is still, you know, is still the self interest of the capital owning class. But it seems like you were not a believer in Marxist theory or Marxist thought at all.
I'm sympathetic. If you actually research Kabbalah, you would appreciate that dialectic materialism comes from the Kabbalah, right? So if you look at Marx and his genealogy, both his maternal and paternal sides of the family, they come from several generations of rabbis. The guy's an aristocrat. Just go and look at his Wikipedia page. He comes from like,
He is Jewish, but he's also very critical of religion in general. And I do feel like the philosophical basis comes from Hegel and not Kabbalah. But maybe I misunderstood
right,
it.
right. So I mean, my first point is that you're still influenced by your environment, right? I mean, if your parents, your grandparents are talking about Kabbalah every single day, you could reject that, but it's still going to influence how you perceive the world. That's point one. And then point two is that um, the Kabbalah infiltrated the larger milieu, the zeitgeist of the times, and so I think it's very hard to understand that materialism and communism without thinking about the Kabbalah. That's my experience. This is something we can go deeper into. But I can show you a lot of similarities between dialectic materialism and Kabbalah. So
I
I
would
mean,
love to
but the
hear
most
more about that actually, because I
right.
feel like it's
So
what you're describing is like almost foundationally
yes,
diametrically opposed to my understanding of materialist thought, especially when paired with the concept of dialectics, which is to disavow the spiritual. Which Hegel's dialectics, yes, was more so about the spirit of certain things, whereas like materialism is all about the real world, simply put.
right. Okay. So have you looked at the tree of life?
I
The tree of life.
know what is the tree of life. I mean,
Okay.
I think I know
So
what that is, but I don't know.
right. Okay. So the tree of life is what Kabbalists believe to be the fundamental underlying logic of the universe. Basically, how God thinks, basically how the universe moves, right? So in their understanding, the universe is energy. And this energy has a certain vibration. It moves. And what the tree of life shows you is how this universe moves. And you actually study the tree of life. What it is fundamentally is thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Okay? So
Uh-huh.
the idea is like everything produces a polarity, and then this polarity in itself combines to create a new force, which then creates a new polarity. And that's dialectic materialism, right? Marx's great innovation is to say, okay, I'm going to take this idea and apply it to
I mean, it's
economics.
dialectics, yeah, but
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's materialism, but
right,
okay, go no, go on. I shouldn't have stopped you. You're
right, right, right,
lecturing.
right. Right. No, no, but I'm saying that's what the tree of life teaches you. Like the
Uh-huh.
fundamental force of the universe is the thesis, antithesis, synthesis dynamic, right? And you can also say this as the generative force, productive force, and then creation. And what Marx, and again, Marx's great innovation is to recognize that, okay, the priority then is economics, okay? And that's how he came up with dialectic materialism. And before, people appreciate it as maybe thought or religion. And Marx says, no, we can simplify it by prioritizing class differences.
Okay. Okay. I still don't fully understand how that is similar, but maybe I just don't have the brain power to comprehend it. But okay, so what's your spiritual analysis then? Because you said everybody believes something, right? Like everybody has like
Yeah,
some kind of spiritual understanding of the world, some kind of religious worldview. What would you say yours is?
right. So, you know, 4 years ago, I was a very happy atheist. I was like you. I was probably more sympathetic to Marx than anyone else. I really believe in dialectic materialism.
Wait, that was 4 years
Um,
ago, you
yeah,
said?
4 years ago. 4 years
Okay.
ago. And then these past 4 years, as I'm teaching history, as I'm teaching the great books, as I'm seeing how uh, things unfold in the world, I have this crisis of faith. And so when I'm looking at what's happening in Iran, I can't explain it simply using game theory. I can't explain it just using, geopolitics. I think there's something much larger going on. I still don't know why Donald Trump attacked Iran. Do you know why? Because he's never really articulated a good reason why he decided to go and attack um, Iran.
Why do I think
So
he attacked Iran?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that the axis of resistance was at its weakest point in the aftermath of 3 years of genocide, and that Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government was able to make a convincing case to to finally strike at Iran, something that like uh, numerous American administrations have said no to. And then he believed foolishly that a regime decapitation would actually create ample ground for regime change. With the Kurdish militias on the ground, foment sectarian conflict, things of that nature. Of course, it didn't happen. I think Benjamin Netanyahu probably utilized the Venezuela victory as well to his advantage. And outside of that, I think ultimately he wanted to, one, disrupt the global world, the global energy supply coming out of the Gulf, because the Gulf is already far
Yeah.
too close to China, America's only, I think, at this point, geopolitical enemy. And they wanted to. I mean, Trump has been doing this already. He wanted to decouple the rest of the world from China. It failed, obviously, with his tariffs, with his Liberation Day tariffs proposals. And then outside of that, I think he wanted to maintain the world's largest known natural oil supplies in Venezuela, which he did. And then he turned around. He turned around and thought he could then either disrupt the Gulf's energy development and increase the rest of the world's over reliance on American refined oil, or rather destabilize Iran and then control Iran so that he would no longer have to worry about the rest of the Gulf potentially aligning with China in any meaningful capacity, which could have created a leverage point for China and would have probably hardened China's position. They're already very clearly aligned with Russia. That's one major energy provider for them. And they still obviously need oil and gas, whereas they are already in control of the next, they have monopoly control over the next wave of the world's energy supply, the green energy, renewable energy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And if like Barack Obama were president, I would agree with your analysis. We're talking about Donald Trump, right? So the thing about Donald Trump is, in his first term, they tried really hard to debrief him. Like, there was the presidential daily briefing, and they recognized this guy doesn't actually read. So at first they tried a paragraph, like instead of one pager, let's give him a paragraph. And it was impossible to focus his attention. He just did not care. So then they were like, okay, like we'll do bullet points, okay? Didn't work either. They're like, okay, we'll draw pictures, and like, didn't work either, okay? Even if you drew pictures for him, he could not keep focus. He could not absorb what you were telling him about geopolitics. And then they recognized the only way to get his attention was to appear on Fox News and tell him the message there. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
this is a guy who has problems paying attention, who has problems being consistent, who has problems putting together coherent thought. So I think he's very emotional. I think he's very instinctual. He believes his own intuition. So again, I have a hard time believing that he actually thought it out.
I don't think
Some
he did. I think that
okay.
there are people around him that some he trusts clearly, that are manipulating him. They're goading him into taking certain actions. But I mean, it's like Joe Biden. Joe Biden was far too old to be making any kind of decisions. It was most likely the team around him that were making these decisions and moving him along. George W. Bush famously wasn't, very well put together, but they were just simply signing off on a lot of these things. But I think the people around him were most likely convinced that this was a decent plan of action, which it of course it wasn't, and they had to push back the Chinese summit once, and then when Donald Trump inevitably appeared alongside Xi Jinping in the China summit, because he had to, it was clear that he did not have any leverage. As a matter of fact, he was bargaining from a position of weakness when he went there, and that's part of the reason why he went back on $14 billion arms transfer to Taiwan, which went against like previous American foreign policy, and probably played a major role in normalizing relations across the strait. But again, that's because he lost. But you said there was a spiritual reason that like you saw you saw Trump moving against Iran, and that like
Yeah.
caused your spiritual awakening. So how did that happen?
Right. Okay. So it was a series of events. Okay. But My first great epiphany was when I was teaching Dante, the Divine Comedy. And it was my first time reading Divine Comedy. And it took me a long time to try to appreciate its beauty, its truth. But when I did, I recognized that this could not have been written by a human being. It is just so beautiful, so perfect, and it revealed a deeper truth. And my only conclusion is this was not written by a human being out of his own free will, out of his own experience. A lot of things I felt he was channeling God. I felt he was channeling the universe, and then um, explaining the truth in poetry. And so the Divine Comedy, what it tells us is that there are two worlds. There's the material world in which we live, and then there's a spiritual world in which our consciousness inhabits. So think of our consciousness as inhabiting infinite dimensions. And our consciousness is able to access the entire universe if we train our consciousness to meditate, to focus, to be ever present. And once we do that, then great truths reveal to us. And I look deeper into this and I recognize that this is what every single great religious and spiritual tradition has taught before, that ultimately we are part of the divine, that God is in us and that we are in God. And as I continue to study more and more history, I recognize that most humans throughout most of human history have believed this, and they've structured societies around us. Our 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 world is unique in that we are completely materialistic, and that we deny the existence of God, that we deny the existence of the soul, of consciousness. In neuroscience, no one has actually spent any research into the nature of our consciousness, and that's kind of weird because we spend most of our time thinking, right? So, like, why haven't we looked into where our thoughts come from, how we structure our thoughts, and how we communicate our ideas? Um, so, the Divine Comedy was a great awakening, and then, like, as I studied history, I recognize a great paradox in our history, which is scientists know that our minds, the way that our minds are structured with the frontal lobe, um, our minds have been this way for the past 200,000 years, but we only have like 10,000 years of recorded history. So what were we doing before the Ice Age? Like were we just like, in caves freezing to death or running around chasing monkeys? Like what were we doing for 300,000 years? And then you look at places like Göbekli Tepe, in Turkey. You look at places like the Amazon forest, the Grand Valley in the United States. There's so much evidence of previous civilizations in these places before, and so I don't know how much of our history is real. So these past 4 years, I've been on a journey, and also I've been looking into certain conspiracy theories, like such as a moon landing, such as JFK, such as 9/11, and the evidence is kind of overwhelming. I like
Overwhelming
I
in
know
what
it's not true.
direction? That it's just
In
fake.
in that in yeah, and the government is covering things up, right? I mean, like just look at 9/11, you just Google World Trade Center building number 7. You're like, oh, wait a minute here. Um, I thought two buildings came down, right? Because there were two planes, but
Mm-hmm.
three buildings came down that day. So how did that
Mm-hmm.
happen? Um, right? And like the moon landing. Oh, okay, we got to the moon, but apparently we lost all the technology. We lost all the data, the telemetry data, and we lost all the footage. So I'm like, oh, how did that happen? Like you have this huge bureaucratic organization, and they
So
lost all the technology.
so
Yeah.
what do you think is going on? Like you think they just like faked all of it? Like they set up 9/11 on their own to like go to war in the Middle East to create sufficient cause? Is that what it is?
Again, unless you have a full appreciation of the cult and its impact on the imagination of people, it's really hard to understand what their motivations are, right? But once you understand their cult, once you look into secret societies, they really believe they have a religious mandate from God into to remake the world in a certain way that welcomes God to our world, right? So look at artificial intelligence, and like this New Yorker article by Ronan Farrow on Sam Altman, where he interviews some OpenAI researchers, and they say like, "Oh, we're trying to summon demons with AI." Like they're being literal about this. They're not joking about this. They're not being metaphorical. They're being
You don't think that's
literal.
just
They believe.
self-interested to greatly increase the potential impact of AI and how scary it is in an effort to justify all the additional billions of dollars in fundraising? Because there's two different schools of thought on this, right? Many people don't believe that AGI is truly possible, and then there are some who are simply trying to feed the bubble to the best of their ability. And part of that is to say that AI is going to take over everything. It's so scary. And that actually causes a lot of people to pay close attention to it and to continue giving money to it, to continue giving money to the likes of Sam Altman specifically so they can continue, I guess, trying to develop it to the best of their ability. I do have a question for you. So you said you
Sure.
read The Divine Comedy only 4 years ago. That seems a little far fetched considering that you got an English degree from Yale.
Well, I mean, but the Divine Comedy is in Italian, right? So we read Shakespeare, Milton, Keats, Wordsworth. We were reading English poetry.
So you didn't read
But
Divine
Divine,
Comedy through your English major at Yale?
no, no, no. And Divine Comedy is actually very hard to read. I mean, I read a lot of classics at Yale. I read, Homer and Plato, but we never read the Divine Comedy.
Okay. I mean,
We should have. We
we
should
read it.
have.
We read it in. I think we read. I mean, I read it in Turkey in like eighth grade, I think. But
Right,
I didn't fully
right.
understand it. But then again, I also didn't think that it was like a divine intervention that like was incepted into Dante's brain.
I spent the past 2 weeks teaching Divine Comedy, and I spent every single day trying to tell people this is God's work. This is not Dante. This is the universe taking possession of Dante in order to spread the divine fire to humanity. I spent the past 2 weeks doing that, and it's on my channel. So
Okay. Um, and you're okay. So you read Divine Comedy, and that just like one shotted you. It one shotted
basically,
your
yes.
mind,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
somehow ties back to Donald Trump's invasion plans of Iran, and
yeah,
that put you down this journey. But that happened. You know that didn't happen 4 years ago, right? That happened
yeah, yeah,
130 days ago is when Donald Trump
yeah.
kickstarted Operation Epic Fury. So the timeline is a little messed up for me. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to.
Okay. All right. So okay. So here's my theory. And again, I could be completely wrong. Okay. But based on my reading of Divine Comedy, this is what I think happened. Okay. There are many Jewish occultists, okay, Kabbalists, okay, who are intent on ushering the end times because they want God to come to earth and to reunite with the Jewish people. Okay. And so one group that is very prominent and very powerful are the Chabad Lubavitch movement, where and then Rebbe Sneerson was leader of that movement for many decades. He's obviously passed away, but the thing about Chabad Lubavitch is like they are the largest property owners in Brooklyn. Okay, so they bought property way back before World War II, and now they're basically the biggest real estate developer in Brooklyn. And a lot of people that are in real estate are maybe front people for the Chabad Lubavitch movement, including like the Kushner family, right? And Donald Trump would obviously have had dealings with Chabad Lubavitch. They're not interested in the mature world. They don't care about that. What they're interested in is fulfilling their end times prophecy. There are three major pillars to the end times prophecy. The first is the completion of the Greater Israel Project, right? Second is the return of the Jewish diaspora to Jerusalem. They want all Jews to return to Israel, and they're fanatical about it. They're very serious about it. And the third is the building of the third temple, because that is where God will live. Okay, so if you just go into the Chabad Lubavitch movement, they're fanatical about these three objectives, and for decades they were planning this. Now, the thing about these religious Jews is they spend all their time meditating on the Torah. You know, they
Wait,
recite the
Professor Jiang,
Torah.
before we move on, I have to ask you some
Right,
questions
right.
here. So you're
Okay.
saying the Chabad Lubavitch movement predates Zionism as an ideology, and that it was actually a foundational ideology before Zionism, pre Theodore Herzl, pre Jabotinsky, and the like, and that they are responsible for Zionism as a prominent ideology, as a settler colonial ideology.
Okay. Let's be precise. Um, so after the Protestant Reformation, um, the idea there were many different groups, including the Freemasons, including the Sabine Frankists, many different groups who are interested in the second coming of Jesus. Okay, um, people like Isaac Newton thought that you now that you have direct access to the Bible is a divine plan because the Bible is literally the Word of God, right? And if you read the Bible in a certain way, right, if you focus on the books of Daniel, the books of Ezekiel, and the book of Revelation, this divine plan is going to reveal itself to you. And this divine plan calls for all three things, okay? So it's not just the Chabad Lubavitch people, it's also a lot of the Freemasons, a lot of different secret societies. They believe that for God to return, you need to meet certain conditions. And again, this is a fringe group of people, but unfortunately, this fringe group of people tend to have all the power in the world. Okay, so
I mean, I don't know if that's the case. Like, I mean,
okay,
I think Zionism is broadly speaking a fairly dominant ideology amongst a lot of evangelical Christians, and certainly many American or Western Jews as well. But having said that, I don't know if it's I don't. Not even that I don't know. I don't believe that this is a foundational ideology that uh, predates the inception of Zionism itself under the likes of Theodore Herzl. There was plenty of discourse around it when it first was being discussed. Many Jews were against it. As a matter of fact, Jews were primarily against it, both for
sure,
theological justifications, different sects of Judaism that understood it as what's I don't know what the term would be in Judaism, but heretical, right? As in
yes, absolutely,
that Jews are not supposed to maintain a nation state
absolutely,
before the return of the
absolutely,
Messiah. And then there were plenty of Jews who were just basically secular, even though Theodore Herzl and many of the other founding fathers of Israel were also secular themselves. But there was the Bundist movement that was anti-fascist and therefore opposed any kind of settler colonial enterprise, such as what Zionism would bring about. So I don't know if that's I don't know if that would be a guiding principle, and I also certainly don't believe that the groups that were able to purchase real estate in Brooklyn are the most powerful financial force in American politics, let alone global politics. I mean, it's just Brooklyn
right,
real estate.
right, okay. So again, you're absolutely right. These points you bring up are absolutely correct. Okay, point one is that Zionism in the year 1900, when Theodor Herzl was active, it was a very fringe thing. Only about 1% of all Jews around the world support the idea of like let's pack our bags, leave our middle class life in England and America, and go to a desert in the middle of nowhere. Like 1% of Jews actually believe this, and you're absolutely right in
It's
that.
before the
Uh,
1900s, even. It's like late 1800s, I think.
yeah, so I think Theodor Herzl, his book Judenland was published in the year 1899.
Yeah.
So um, so at this point in history, the idea of return to Jewish homeland, Jerusalem, it is not popular. But as you point out, the other issue is that it is heretical, right? Because the very basis of Zionism, Christian Zionism is that you can actually manipulate history, and that goes against God's will, right? It is God's will that the Jews be dispersed around the world because of their sins, because of their lack of faith in God. And when God has chosen the Jews already, then he will send a Messiah to take them back to the promised land. Okay, that's the order of things. And so the priority for Jews is to practice a life of piety, a life of goodness, a life of generosity. And then when God is ready, then the Messiah will come. Okay, that's what most Jews believe.
Okay,
But my
quick question for you, actually. I don't know how many Jewish friends you have, but at least maybe in the spaces that I occupy, they don't believe any of that shit. As a matter of fact, for the
right,
most part, most Jews that I know at least are, they're atheists. They say they're Jewish. They may have, attended a couple dinners every now and then, but for the most part, they're just, they're chill about this sort of stuff. So I don't like a lot of
yeah,
Jews are secular. I don't think they believe
yeah.
any of this stuff. So I don't know if we're
I went to Yale. I went to Yale, so I didn't know a lot of Jewish people.
and
But
so the Jewish people that you met at Yale, they were like, this is what we're about. We got to live a life of
no,
piety.
no, no, no. They were secular. They were
Yeah.
extremely
Okay.
intelligent. They were very open-minded. They were very cosmopolitan. They were secular. I don't recall meeting any religious Jews. But what I've learned is this. Okay, you have about 1 million people. You actually don't need that many people in order to create a movement that has a direct influence on geopolitics. If only 1% of these 1 million people decide, you know what, we really believe in something fanatically, and we're willing to sacrifice our lives in order to achieve our goal, and we're willing to pour resources, and we're willing to spend the rest of our lives doing this. And not only that, but we're willing to indoctrinate our children to complete our mission and our grandchildren to complete this mission over the course of 100 years. Well, this 1% is going to have a lot of influence in finance, a lot of influence in business, a lot of influence in politics and geopolitics.
So you
Okay,
think
so
it's
that
the
like
Chabad Lubavitch guys that have a lot of influence in finance? It's not just like even if because the common trope is there's a lot of Jewish people in positions of power, right? And in the field of
yeah,
finance and whatnot. Um, I don't think any of those guys are a part of Chabad Lubavitch, or maybe some might be, but by and large, I think like there are some who are Zionists, some who have varying degrees of interest in like defending Israel's interests, but for the most part, they're they have their own self interest. Uh, from my perspective, it's regardless of what someone's religious background is maintaining their class position, right?
okay,
Jewish, Christian doesn't matter. That's the way I interpret the world, at least, right?
okay, all right. So there's certain things about Donald
Because
Trump.
I don't think Hasidic Jews run finance is what I'm saying. That would be
Right,
a shock to me.
right, right. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying like, about Lubavitch, they run everything, okay? But um but okay. This is like really complicated. So let me go step by step. Okay. Chabad Lubavitch, they're interested in religious meditation. They're interested in mysticism. Okay, they're interested in ideas. And so they focus all their energies on certain on meditation, okay? And what they want, what they pray for is, of course, the coming of the Messiah and the return of the Jews to Jerusalem and to be one with God. And if we believe the universe is pure energy, if we believe the universe is conscious, then these ideas would be uploaded to the universal subconscious. Okay, does that make sense? Because and
I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, but I'm listening. I'm open minded.
okay, right, right, but I want
Like
to make sure the
I don't
logic is
believe
clear,
we're all
okay?
uploading our energy into a collective
Right,
consciousness
okay.
or
But
anything like
I'm
that.
saying like let's just work with that, okay? So, through the meditation of thousands of people over decades, there are certain ideas that are embedded now in the universal subconscious. But as you're uploading, you're also downloading as well, right? And as you
Mm-hmm.
download, you get a pretty broad schematic understanding of the course of this universe, okay? And you appreciate certain geopolitical movements. For example, that the United States will win World War II and establish Pax Americana. For example, the Soviet Union would rise to challenge the United States. For example, the rise of China, okay? Um, like you could like what I do, if through enough concentration, appreciate how these events would unfold over time. Well, if you know this is going to happen, this is great for people who work in business and in finance, right? Because it allows them to make better business decisions. And so they're attracted to your movement, not because they are religious zealots, because they're like, wow, this is a great way for me to make more money for myself, right?
So wait,
Because
hold on.
as
So let
yes,
me get this let me get this clear. So you're saying that there are people, right? Jews,
yes,
non-Jews, in positions of
yes,
power, and they find themselves attracted to this way of thinking, represented by Chabad Lubavitch, because they think hard and they meditate and they unlock the download and the upload that you're getting because this allows them to make better market decisions and make more money.
that's right, right? So the
Okay,
saying
where
is,
is the? You have to have some evidence for this, right? Because that seems a little far fetched, Professor Jiang.
okay, well, I mean, like, let's look at the Epstein files, right?
Okay,
Why are these people like Bill Gates and Bill Clinton, why are they hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein? What's your answer?
um, Jeffrey Epstein is a facilitator that was deeply embedded in a lot of these circles. Networker, most likely affiliated with Mossad, most likely affiliated with the CIA, and his job was quite literally to be the guy that everybody knows, who can be a fixer at times, and uh, who can also be the person who mass produces sex trafficked children, sex trafficked models of adult age, and you know, create a sequence of blackmail files on every single very wealthy person that they could deploy at times if necessary.
Explain to me like why he was obsessed. Like there were a lot of emails where he was like, like let's get pizza and grape juice, grape soda, right? Pizza and grape soda,
So
right?
you think that was
Like he,
code? Because he would straight
well,
up be like, you know, talking about how he wants to children too. So I've always been a little confused by that because like, why is he using code words like pizza at times, and then other times he's just straight up being like, "Do not send me an adult prostitute. I would like a child prostitute," is what he would say in some of the.
so there were two major phrases that were like confusing, right? The first was like grape pizza and grape soda, okay, and the other was like going to the dentist. These kids were going to the dentist a lot, man. Like once a month or something like that.
No,
Do
no.
you
Well, the
think it was
dentist one is understandable. That was actually. I mean, he also had the dental chairs in his compounds, and I think that was to. I mean, I don't know what he was doing, but it was definitely like some kind of either torture or some way of um, potentially
oh
removing
yeah,
their
yeah,
dental records after
yeah, yeah. He was
disposing of the victims, like something along those lines for sure. But again, that's more overt rather than covert.
okay.
So
All
why
right.
is he going
So
overt at times, but then why is he also using the code word pizza?
right, okay. So I understand what he's doing. And I understand why Bill Gates and Bill Clinton would be attracted to him. Okay. But one thing that people have never resolved, a question that people have never resolved is like, how did he get to his position where he knows the Rothschilds, where he where everyone's trying to be his best friend, right? It's not like him going to meet Elon Musk. It's like Elon Musk wants to meet him.
Yeah,
There's a
no, I mean
difference.
that's way after. So I think it was that school that he was working at as a math teacher who
Dalton.
the Bill Barr's father I think
Yeah,
was the
the Dalton
headmaster
School.
at. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then he gets elevated. I think at some point he's connected with what's his name? Les Wexner, right? He goes to Dalton School. He gets connected with Les Wexner. He basically becomes like Les Wexner's potential love interest, allegedly, and also somewhere along the way gets access to all of his finances, becomes like sole financial guardian.
Okay.
And he just keeps. I mean, at some point, I assume he was tapped in by the intelligence community to play this role, as they, I guess, saw him as a decent serial networker who could be in
Okay.
and out of
So
these crowds.
Right. So let's go over his timeline, okay? So as you point out, he gets a job at the Dalton School. Then he goes to Bear Stearns, and at age 30, he's invited by David Rockefeller to join the Trilateral Commission.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives an interview to Steve Bannon, and he's like, "Well, it's because I'm a math genius, and they want that. You're 30 years old,
Yeah,
and
I don't
David
believe that.
Rockefeller."
I think it
Right,
wasn't
right.
his math genius that caused a possible vestige of espionage to tap into what he could potentially do. I think it was just they thought that they could utilize him as a person that could be operating in these circles.
Okay, all right. So at age 30, he joins the Trilateral Commission, and then after Bear Stearns, he works for a man named Douglas Leese, who's an arms dealer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's heavily involved in Iran-Contra.
Mm-hmm.
And then in
So he's
19, in
at that point
1991,
he's obviously already affiliated, is what I'm saying. Like
right,
it's
right.
just
And in the year 1991, Lex Wexner signs over power of attorney to Jeffrey Epstein. Who would you give power? You personally, I want to ask you, who would you give power of attorney to? Who would you be comfortable signing your power of attorney over to?
um probably nobody, but
Yeah,
I do
I would say
understand.
so.
Like no, I'm not saying that it's not strange. I totally understand that. I think the reason for why he did that was because by that point he already been tapped in, and he was the fixer for a lot of these powerful people, and had connections to the CIA.
Okay, so Lex Wexner, okay? Two things about him, okay? First of all, what's really strange about him is he signed over power of attorney to a guy he didn't really know well in 1991 named Jeffrey Epstein. The second thing is like he's the founder of something called the Mega Group, right? The study group. And the study group are responsible for a lot of Jewish charities, including Birthright Israel, so sponsoring all these uh, Jewish teenagers to go to Israel for a couple weeks. I've actually been on a Birthright Israel trip. Yeah, really funny thing. I've been on a Birthright Israel trip. You haven't, but I have.
No, I have not. Oh wait,
Right.
but okay, so we're going all over the place. I don't understand how any of this has, so are you saying that Jeffrey Epstein had like he was a part of the mystical
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Hasidim, and
exactly what I'm
that's the
saying.
reason why?
That's look, I'm trying to figure out why Jeffrey Epstein is put into the position that he is. And given his background, if I'm just looking at this objectively and saying, like, what's this guy doing? It seems like he's being trained for a special mission, right? And who would have the
Yeah.
power?
Yeah,
Who would have the authority?
mass produce blackmail for very powerful people that you can deploy if necessary, while also being deeply embedded in like elite society, which is, I mean, I think there's utility for that for the
But
CIA. There's utility for
but
that for Mossad.
right, but I use game theory. So I'm trying to figure out who would do this. Who would tell Lex Wexner to give Jeffrey Epstein power of attorney? Who would tell Douglas Leese to go hire this guy and train him up to work in intelligence and in arms trafficking around the world? And I think, like, given all my research, okay, the
Mm-hmm.
person that would have the power, and I'm not saying it's him, but I'm saying like a person who would have the power to do this would be Rebbe Sneerson of the Chabad Lubavitch movement. Okay,
Okay.
so there are
I
two
still don't
videos of
understand how like I don't understand how that has anything to do with this Rebbe being like what I can't connect here is like where is the mystical future sight power coming from for
okay,
these
all right, okay,
magical
okay. Let's
mystical
let's
Rebbes?
just use let's use our imagination, okay, and let's try to be Rebbe Sneerson and go into his mind and how he think how he perceives the world. Okay, I'm Rebbe Sneerson, and I believe I'm a reincarnation of these great Jewish mystics who are now possessing me in order to fulfill the end times prophecy, the great reunion between the Jews and Yahweh. Okay, that's what I believe.
Uh-huh.
Now, how do I go about doing this? Well, first of all, I need to create a transnational organization that can be politically effective in the United States and in Russia. Why? Because these are the two most powerful countries in the world at this point in history. And I know that because I've seen the future. Okay. So I need to create a political
But
organization that
wait,
is
I'm
rigid.
I'm in the red bay's mind, and I can see the future already.
Yes, you can see the
Okay,
future. Yes.
that
Okay.
already sounds far fetched. I'm gonna be honest. I feel like I don't think the red bay had the future foresight gifts, but okay.
Okay, Again, this is just a thought experiment. Okay, we're just using our imagination, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to explain to you how this could have worked. I'm not saying this is what happened. I'm just saying like how do we add up all these different dots together? Okay, one is you have this guy who really believes he's a reincarnation of these different Jewish mystics that know the future, and his job is to implement the next phase of the plan. Okay, that's one. Number two is I now need to build organizations and find individuals that can help me fulfill this plan. So I'm building Chabad Lubavitch both in Russia and in Israel and in the United States because these are the three nations that are most crucial to helping me achieve my plan. All right. So these people are pulling their resources and buying up real estate as much as possible. What's really important for me is to figure out who could potentially be political
I
allies
mean, why did they
and
buy
political.
Brooklyn? I mean, Brooklyn real estate didn't even get better until like recently, until it got gentrified in the last couple of decades. Why didn't they just buy out Manhattan, for example? You know what I mean? If they had the future
Well,
foresight, I feel
well, I
like
mean,
I would make plays
well,
on Manhattan instead of Brooklyn. You know what I mean?
a lot of Chabad Lubavitch were immigrants from Eastern Europe and from Ukraine and from Russia, right? And they just congregated in that area. And so once they congregated in that area,
But if they have future
they
foresight, it shouldn't matter, right?
um okay. Future foresight is not that specific. Future foresight gives you visions of how the global map works
Also,
out.
why haven't
Okay,
they been able to infiltrate China? You think? Is if I'm look,
who,
I'm the
who
Red Bay
says they have
right
not
now. I'm the
infiltrated
Red Bay
China?
right now, right?
Wait,
Honestly,
sorry. Who says they have not infiltrated China?
I'm the Red Bay, right? And I'm
Yes,
thinking, okay, 100 years of Chinese humiliation. What's next? 100
yes,
years of Chinese prosperity. Okay.
right.
Eventually, there's the
Yeah.
excess of the Cultural Revolution. And then Deng Xiaoping comes in, liberalizes the economy, reforms kick in, and then there's a period of instability in the aftermath of that. But ultimately, we get to the Xi Jinping era, right? China's rising. China's a rising superpower. I'm trying to get in there. Why haven't I got in there as the Red Bay?
Well, first of all, who says they have not infiltrated China?
You think
I
the
do.
Chabad
I do.
Lubavitch has
I
infiltrated
do.
China?
Yes, I do.
Wow,
But not in the way,
that's
but not in the way you imagine.
okay.
Okay. So, um, what what do you think the Chinese elite care most about? The people in power. What do you think they care the most about?
What do I think the Chinese elite care most
Yeah.
about? I don't know. I mean, probably stability. Like
Okay.
broadly, are we talking about the party's goals? Like, what do you mean Chinese
Yeah.
elite?
I'm just saying, like, you're a provincial governor of China or you're a billionaire in China. What are your
If I'm
priorities?
a part of the well, now I'm a part of the party. I'm a billionaire. I'm a business owner in China. I'm thinking, how do I perform to the best of my abilities, and how do I go up through the ranks of the party? If I'm a billionaire, I'm probably not going to make it to the top echelon of power, regardless. But I'm trying to be on Xi's good side. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. Well, my priority would be this, to get my money and my children out of China,
Okay.
right?
You,
That,
you
that'd be
think
my
that's
priority.
what you think that's what all the billionaires are trying to do? They're trying to get their money out of China.
Well, you just look at the statistics, right? The number like the amount of money leaving the country, the number of people fleeing the country. It's pretty overwhelming, right? And why? Because it's a one party state, right? I'm a
Mm-hmm.
billionaire. What's to stop the party from like taking my money the next day,
Yeah, of course. I mean, it happens all the time.
right?
It's
Right. So my priority, number one priority is to get
the
my money out of the
prosperity
country,
initiative.
right? To get my money out of the country and to get my children out of the country, right? Now I need people to help me facilitate this process to get my money out of the country, to money launder it, and to ensure my children are embedded in the elite circles of America, right? To get them
Mm-hmm.
in adults in school, get them to Yale, to get them jobs at JP Morgan,
Okay. So
right?
how does this connect back to Jewish control of China?
Well, because the Jews and the Chinese get along very well,
Okay. But like how does
right?
that
So,
but I
well,
don't understand how
because
that in any way shape or form creates the cuz you're saying that the Rebbe has future foresight and is
this
has
is just a
already
thought experiment. I
infiltrated.
had no idea. I've
Okay,
never met
you're
the guy. He's
speculating
dead.
that the Rebbe has future
Wait, wait,
foresight and he's
right, right,
like
right, right.
trying to infiltrate the Chinese halls of power. Here's the thing though, if you're a billionaire and you've like fled China, or if you have significant amount of investment in the Western world, I suspect that you don't have the same level of connection within Chinese governance any longer, right? Because like when you do that sort of thing, especially I feel like in the Xi Jinping era, especially any kind of financial corruption of that sort is oftentimes stamped out pretty aggressively, and your ties are often severed with the party. So, how does that translate back to party power? How does that translate back to influence within Chinese governance?
Okay, so what I'm doing is it's all a thought experiment. I'm not saying this is actually what happens. I'm saying like how this could potentially play out. Okay,
Yeah,
so
so
I'm
I
very scared.
expanded on the thought experiment. I was like, so we agree China's rising as a rising power, as a global, it's you
Right,
know a global
right, right.
superpower.
And do you agree that a lot of these billionaires, a lot of these powerful people are trying to move their money and their children out of the country?
But then they sever their
And
connection to
they're not
centers
severing the
of power
connection.
within China.
They're not severing their connections. All they're doing is they're moving their money and their children out of the country, right? But they're not severing the connections. They're still where they are. They're still, in that political position that they are. They are still running factories, doing real estate deals in China. But they're trying to move their money and their children out of the country because that is the best strategy for them in order to ensure their safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I need people who I can trust, who are powerful in America, who are well connected in America, who can help me facilitate this process, right? To get my kids into Yale, to move my billions and put them into real estate deals in the United States.
I don't think that that connection makes a whole lot of sense. I'll be honest. I don't think there's a Chabad Lubavitch connection. I just don't understand why it's a Chabad Lubavitch that's at the center of all of these
Right, right,
theories.
right. Okay, okay, okay. So I think a lot of problem is like
Especially because like
you.
have you met like Hasidic Jews in general? Like I mean I don't.
I have not met Hasidic Jews.
I
I've
was about
never
to
met
say
Hasidic
they're.
Jews.
I mean like by
Yes.
and large, their financial circumstances broadly are not as great as you are presenting it. They're very poor.
I agree. I agree.
So
I completely
there's
agree.
a
I
select group
appreciate
of
that.
them or something. Is that what's going on? With they're the ones who control the money.
Okay, so my first point is like the situation is not as static as as you believe. It's I mean it's people. It's a lots of circles that intersect at certain points. Okay, does that make sense? I'm saying like has like so I'm not saying that his Jews run everything. Like that's just absurd. I'm saying like there are different convergence points. Okay.
Uh huh.
Finance is doing finance, China's doing finance, Chabad Lubitsch is doing Chabad Lubitsch. But I'm saying there are certain convergence points. And it's these convergence points that matter
Yeah, but
for
I just don't.
our
I
analysis.
just don't understand. Like, it's not like China's like heavily invested in BNH or like Satmar Jews or something. You know what I mean? They're not. There's just
Okay,
like
all right, all right.
different groups of
Let's
people that own different properties, and that isn't distributed across the board. There's no like center of power here that is consolidated in the hands of the few in the way that you have
I completely
represented
agree.
it.
I completely agree. But again, I think there is a confluence of interests that lead to certain events unfolding. Okay. Let's continue the thought experiment where I'm Rabbi Schneerson and I'm creating this organization about Lubavitch. And what else I'm doing is I'm identifying certain potential political allies. Okay. I'm in 1980s, 1990s in New York City. Okay. I'm Rabbi Schneerson. I'm looking around me and like, who do I think could potentially be a president of the United States, what kind of person do I think could uh, run the White House, and who I could work with and co-opt over time? I'm
You think
looking in
they
1980.
chose Donald Trump? That's what you think?
I think so. I think so.
That's crazy. All
Okay,
right, if you
look,
hey,
look,
listen,
look, 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 look. Okay, number one, Donald Trump, since the 1980s, was saying, I want to be president of the United States.
I
I
know, but
should be.
so do many
Okay,
people.
okay. I understand. Okay, so I'm not saying they only pick Donald Trump. I'm saying like they're looking at different people, and it's like a VC fund, right? You're putting your money in different companies, right? And so Donald Trump is someone that they're looking at because one, Donald Trump has been saying since the 1980s, I want to be president of the United States. Second of all, he's probably at this time the most famous American around the world, right? Like if you're like
No,
in Africa
Donald Trump was
in
not the
the
most famous.
1980s.
No,
Okay,
Donald Trump in the
okay,
1980s was not the most famous American. You got Michael Jackson, you got Michael Jordan,
sure,
1990s. He
sure.
was
But
nowhere
for
near
a
the
lot
most
of
famous.
people,
He was barely famous in America. I mean, he was like in rap songs and stuff like that for some period of time, but
I think if you're a poor person living in Africa, the person who
you
you
think a
most
poor
admire,
person living in Africa knew who Donald Trump was in the 80s?
I think so. I
No,
think
that's
so.
crazy.
Because at this time in history, okay, like around the world, people are gonna associate the American dream with Donald Trump. This is a guy who got rich and he's able to, sleep with like movie stars. He's able to
I no,
like just
I don't think he was seen like that at all. He wasn't seen like that at all. He had a wife, like he was just like a weird real estate guy that was kind of gross.
he
It's
was in the
actually a
tabloids every
big
single day.
driver, is a big motivator of his enmity towards the cultural elite, is that he was never welcome because he was too rude and he was too nouveau riche. So that was his like big driving motivator to like destroy the cultural elite, the liberal intelligentsia. They mostly saw him as a cartoon figure. Um,
I agree. I agree. Like in the 1980s, the rich saw Donald Trump as a clown. I agree with that. But again, again, like we're imagining we're Snare. I'm like, who can we invest in? Like who would be a good investment? You're not invest in someone who's a real billionaire that everyone admires because it's going to cost you a lot to invest in him. But you've got this guy, Donald Trump, who thinks he's rich, but who's not really rich, and who everyone detests, right? He's someone that you could nurture over time. In Mar-a-Lago, there is a replica of the Ark of the Covenant in Mar-a-Lago.
okay,
Do you know about this?
no, but go on.
Okay, but you can actually Google this. There's a replica of the Art of the Covenant in Mar-a-Lago.
Okay.
Whenever like Donald Trump has a 99% approval rating in Israel, they literally see him as the reincarnation of Cyrus the Great in
Well, they don't
Israel.
anymore. They fucking hate him now because he told Israel to stand down in Lebanon. His approval rating
Um,
dipped like 60 points, I think, in a matter of 2 weeks.
okay, but right, and
But
but
before
they
he
see
was a very popular figure in Israel. They liked him a
right,
lot more
and
than
they see him as Cyrus the Great. Okay, the reincarnation of Cyrus the Great, someone who is going to take the Jews back to Jerusalem and build the third temple. Um,
yeah.
then you
I'm gonna be
have
honest. Again, I don't think many Jews are as like religiously involved in this messianic. Like, there's the red heifer stuff, but they're by and large. I think Zionism is a civic nationalist substitute for any kind of religious understanding of the world. So I don't. I think it's more so born out of like a level of self-preservation, self-interest, a fear that if there isn't a Jewish state, that like the Holocaust could happen again, things of that nature, and not necessarily this religious ideology. Are there some Jewish people, like fundamentalists, who have this kind of perspective? Certainly, but they are not the majority at all. I don't think like the average Jewish person in Israel believes that Donald Trump is like truly going to lead Jews to the promised land. Right? I don't think that's the case. I
then
mean,
why is
they like him because he's pro-Israel. Like that's pretty simple, and that's precisely the reason why now that he is seen as not as pro-Israel, because for the first time ever, Donald Trump is not Donald Trump has been seen as being at odds with Netanyahu or restraining Israel in some capacity, albeit limited, his approval ratings declined dramatically.
Let me ask you this question, okay? And you can take a guess. But Javier Milei, when he became president of Argentina, his first foreign trip, okay, as a head of state of Argentina, was to where?
Yeah,
And oh, sorry.
Javier Milei is very pro. There are a lot of Latin American countries that are now changing rulers are all running on an openly pro-Israel slant. I mean, Venezuela
Okay.
also shipped oil to Israel, albeit symbolic, immediately
Are you
after
guessing
the
Israel?
coup. So I'm aware of all this. Yes, but
No,
that
no, no. But
is
I'm saying Javier Milei's first foreign trip as head of state of Argentina was to where?
Israel, I assume, right? That's
Wrong. The answer is Brooklyn. The first thing he did was visit Rebbe Sneerson's grave in Brooklyn. You can Google this.
uh-huh. Okay. I mean, this is all
Wait, so I'm asking you who this guy is, Rebbe Sneerson. Like why
I
would
don't know. I
Javier
mean,
Milei?
he's just like he's a religious. He's like a random religious figure in America, but
Okay, right. There are two videos on YouTube.
he's
Okay.
also very pro-Israel, right? Like a lot of these Latin American countries and their leadership are now openly pro-Israel. And
Wait. But
that
I'm trying to
here's
figure
the
out.
thing. Here's the thing. There's a reason for it, right? Like you're like why the fuck would Javier Milei be pro-Israel? He's in Argentina. Is the
No. I'm
question.
asking yourself, why would he go visit the grave of Rebbe Sneerson as the head of state of Argentina, his
I mean,
first foreign trip?
it's the same reason why people go and show support at the Wailing Wall, right? Like, it's just to say like, oh, this I'm with you. Like it's a symbolic show of support.
So
I
there are
don't think there's any
two
like spiritual reason for it.
there are two YouTube videos. Okay, the first YouTube video is Benjamin Netanyahu before he becomes prime minister. Okay, before he enters Israeli politics, he goes and meets with Rebbe Sneerson and says, "I ask for your blessing." And Rebbe Sneerson like blessing in politics or personal, like in Netanyahu is like both personal and professional. And Rabbi Sturgeon like, when is the Messiah coming? We must accelerate the coming of the Messiah. Like it's on YouTube. You can actually just go on YouTube and it's there. Okay, I'm not making this up. Okay, that's the
Hmm.
first video. Second video is Rabbi Sneerson is greeting his followers, and one of the followers is like, I'm the mother of Steven Spielberg, and I want your blessing. Okay, so
Hmm.
I'm trying to figure out who this guy is and like how he's so well connected. Why is like all the most powerful people in the world going to him and saying like, "Give me your
I
blessing"?
mean, you just brought up a very wide range of people. Steven Spielberg's mother is not one of the most powerful people on the planet.
No. But Steven
I
Spielberg is,
also
right?
once again, yeah, it's a show of support for a specific sect of Judaism. I don't think it's like I don't think it's necessarily
No, it's
anything
not.
beyond that. I mean, it's like
No,
visiting the
no.
Pope. Like if people are doing that because they're like, yeah, that's the Pope, you know?
The Pope is one of the most powerful people in the world, right?
I mean,
So and
the Pope has a lot of influential power, but I don't think people are necessarily visiting the Pope because they feel like there's like a secret society that they're tapped into. It's
right, no,
debatable how powerful the Pope
but I'm
is.
saying like if you're Catholic and the Pope gave you a call and says, "Hey, can you give this guy who's my friend power of attorney?" I think all Catholics would do that, right?
I don't think the Pope is making phone calls like that. I'm gonna be honest.
I'm not saying that either. I'm saying like if that were the case, right? So
So this
because I'm
ties
trying
back
to
to the
connect all the
Rebbe
dots.
that we were talking about. You're saying that he made the call to Les Wexner.
It's never that simple. He told someone to go tell someone to go tell someone to go tell someone, and then Lex Wexner did that. It's like circles and circles. It's never that's that like simple, right? It's not like Rebbe
Okay.
Sneerson, right? It's like Rebbe Sneerson's like, like basically saying, I bless this man, Jeffrey Epstein, right? Word gets out to someone else, and Lex Wexner's like, oh, well, if Jeffrey Epstein is approved by Rebbe Sneerson, then I can give him power of attorney and I can develop him fully to his potential, right? I think these things are much more amorphous, much more ambiguous than people appreciate, and that's why, like, if you actually talk to these people, they think you're nuts if you point out the connections, right?
I mean, not really. Again, there are a lot of religious leaders that people show support to. I mean, I think Zohar Mamdani went to the Rebbe's grave too. It's like it's just a thing that you
Really?
do because you're
Really?
yeah, it's a thing that you
I didn't know
do.
that.
Yeah, it's a thing that you do in order to gain favor from different constituents that are going to go out and vote. It's just like it's the same as like going to the when you're Michael Bloomberg went to the same mosque that Zohar Mamdani went to. That doesn't mean Michael Bloomberg is like secretly Shia Muslim now. You know what I mean? It's just a way to signal your support to these different groups in a relatively diverse environment like New York.
And so,
Javier Milei is also a bit of a weeb for Judaism. Kaya, what are you doing, girl? But that's a separate situation, I think. Having said that, once again, there is a reason, as I was trying to say, that there are a lot of like Latin American leaders that show support to Israel. But I don't think it's like some secret messianic Jewish conspiracy, but rather it's a way to signal support for Western foreign policy, specifically
why
American
are there
foreign policy that you will be a loyal servant to.
why are there so many IDF soldiers in Argentina?
I don't know, vacationing or there's the Patagonia
Yeah, yeah,
fires,
yeah.
right? That's what you're.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the exact details of what's going on there, as far as like what may have taken place, but as far as as far as land grabs or whatnot, I don't know how that I don't know how that translates to again some kind of like grand Jewish conspiracy.
I'm not saying there's a grand Jewish conspiracy. I never said that. I'm not saying the Jews control the world. I'm not saying they're conspiring to control the world. All I'm saying is there are forces at play. And once these forces converge together, this offers you a better insight into how geopolitics works than the simple dialectic materialism. That's all I'm saying,
Mm.
right? Because like the Rebbe Station is just a thought experiment, right? And I'm trying to figure out. I never met this guy. I know nothing about him.
I just
I
don't think
don't
any of
know.
these guys believe in the spiritual stuff. I think they just look at the situation. They look at the world
Okay,
as a matter of self interest, advancing their self interest. And many powerful people in positions of power, they're not in like secret societies or whatever. They're pretty open about their ambitions. They don't do it in like cigar filled rooms. They do it at Davos. They do it at G10 summits where they get
okay,
together and they just say, "Look, this is our." We have to maintain control over the Middle East. Iran is a sovereign nation, and as a sovereign nation, it presents tremendous destabilizing power against Israel, which is our unsinkable aircraft carrier in the region that is a destabilizing force. And if there are some people in Israel that believe the messianic, the end times conspiracies or whatever, that's fine. But I don't think that's the major motivating principle of the likes of Benjamin Netanyahu, for example. I mean, he's a conservative Jew that grew up in Philadelphia, so I don't think that like he's a firm and committed believer in that. I think he just wants to leave a lasting legacy and expand the boundaries of Israel. That's what I think
okay.
he's doing, and it just
Right,
works.
okay.
These interests coalesce with America's interest in the region.
Okay, and I would say I would agree with you on this, but at the same time, I think that if we just use this perspective, okay, then we would have to conclude that eventually this war against Iran will end, right? Because it's not in their best interest for this war to continue for too long. Is that correct? Okay, I'm trying to figure out, okay, we have this model of the universe, which is dialectic materialism, self-interest. And so let's extrapolate
I
from this
mean,
and figure out
there
where
there
this
are
war
other
in Iran
competing
would go.
forces here as well. Obviously, like America has to save face. America has to maintain force projection capabilities. That's like the entire underpinning of the dollar being the reserve currency. If America's military might is bested by a middle power like Iran because it has complete control over the Strait of Hormuz and can dominate the American military that way and dominate global capital that way, then obviously, America's no longer the superpower we once thought it was. That would destabilize everything. So there is the competing interest there of America trying to save face to the best of its ability. So I suspect that they'll try to wean out of the situation, and probably maintain this like weird limbo where is there a memorandum of understanding? Will Iran actually get sanctions relief or not? I suspect that the reasonable thing to do in this circumstance would be to actually retreat from the rest of the globe in the way that we've dominated, and instead move to, I guess, harden our defenses in the Donroe Doctrine in the Western Hemisphere, and redouble our efforts there, and not try to pick as much of a fight in the Middle East. I don't know if we'll do that. I'm just saying that would be the reasonable thing to do.
So let me ask you this: do you think the Al-Aqsa Mosque will be destroyed?
I hope not, but that is definitely the goal of a lot of there's definitely a group of people in Israel that want to do it. I mean, there's like archaeological digs that they're conducting underneath the mosque in a specific attempt to like destroy the foundation that it remains on top of.
Right, but I'm saying like this: if we just looked at the world from a purely dialect materialist perspective, I mean, it'd be insane to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I mean, like you would incite a religious crusade, right? I mean, like you have like.
I mean, I believe there are people who believe a litany of different nonsensical things, and that could motivate them to take action. I understand that. I'm not discounting that at all.
So all I'm saying,
I just don't think that there is a. I think that as long as it coalesces or converges with the interests of more powerful nations like the United States of America, or as long as it's in the interest of Benjamin Netanyahu to maintain a coalition with the more fundamentalist, more religious Jews in his coalition, he will make it seem as though that's fine, and he won't make he won't like force them to retreat in any capacity as long as they don't like destabilize too hard. But things do happen. They might end up. They might end up doing something that's like completely chaotic, but I don't think it's I don't think it's going to bring about the end times prophecy is what I mean.
Okay, all right. So I think here you and I would agree where maybe we can use economic self-interest to explain 95%, right? But then there's this unpredictable religious fanatical element to it, maybe 5%. That changes the vector of events, right? So if there were no religious fanaticism going on, okay, we can predict how this war will end up. But because there are these religious fanatics, maybe 5% of the population, and we're talking about like both in the United States, in Israel, in Iran, these are just religious fanatics, and they want this war to achieve their end times prophecy. And you and I agree, like they probably won't achieve their end times prophecy, okay? But that doesn't mean they won't try. And because they'll do certain things, then these events will basically become catastrophic, right? So I think right now the war is containable. But if the Al-Aqsa Mosque is destroyed, right, then all bets are off. Like we don't know what's going to happen now.
I mean, who knows? Who knows how the Muslim world reacts? They have, I mean, they've conceded quite a bit because Israel has, in line with the United States of America, Israel has been a fairly dominant force in the region. And given that they've turned a blind eye to the massacres of the Palestinians in Gaza, I don't know if the Arab world or the Muslims would revolt. Probably, maybe. And I don't know where that would go. But I don't think this is like. My point is, I don't think that this is an event that's being triggered deliberately by design by a group of individuals that are secretly controlling society in any meaningful capacity or have an understanding of the future or can see the future. It's just more so people that are, self-invested and some who believe in ridiculous things. And you keep those forces at bay to the best of your ability. But the only reason why they're a part of the Netanyahu coalition, for example, is because of immediate political reasons, immediate domestic political reasons, and not like a much larger, much broader, cult that is a towering force behind closed doors.
Okay, so let me make my argument, and you tell me if it makes sense to you, okay? So I'm not saying is a top-down system of secret societies where they control everything, and we are just slaves to their whims. But there are lots of people embedded in different positions of power. They may be formally or informally attached together, but they have certain beliefs that are similar, okay? So you have these Christian Zionists, and you have these Zionists, and you have these Mormons and other groups, okay? They're not aligned. They don't have these meetings, conferences where they get together and say, you know, let's plot to destroy the world together, okay? They don't do that. But they have certain belief systems that align, which call for the return of the Jews to Jerusalem, which calls for war in the Middle East, which calls
Yeah, but
for
I
the
don't think that's
destruction.
happening either. That's my point. Because I
Okay.
mean, again, from all the Jewish people I know that live in the United States of America, some Zionists, some anti-Zionists, many anti-Zionists, uh, ain't nobody's trying to live in Israel. They're not going to Israel, no matter what happens. This includes like
How do
Michael
you
Rappaport, for
explain?
example. That motherfucker loves Israel and he lives in New
Yeah,
York. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So like there's no drive for many of these people to go and
How do you
live in Israel
explain?
to like trigger the end times prophecy.
How do you explain the rise of anti-Semitism after October 7th? Right? I, I mean, you're on social media. You notice how before October 7th, no one talked about the Jews, and
No,
then after
there
October
was
7th,
definitely there's always been like people look, there's two different kinds of anti-Semitism, right? There's like the way that people will casually say like, oh, Jews are in finance, Jews are in Hollywood, but they also made Seinfeld and I love Seinfeld, so it's fine, right? Like that's been the otherization of Jews for quite a long time. And then there's always been people who are like, no, Jews are at the heart of a lot of these conspiracies, like the old fashioned anti-Semitism, the protocols style of anti-Semitism that neo-Nazis have tried to bring back into the forefront in perpetuity. As far as like post October 7, the increase in hatred of Jews is a direct consequence of the anti-Semitic incidents spiking in the aftermath of Israeli sieges in the past. Whenever Israel sieges Gaza, it does so by falsely claiming that it's doing this at the behest of Judaism, at the behest of like Zionists are, Zionism is Judaism. We're doing this as the Jewish state over and over again. And the defense of that in the Western world is always packaged in the same way. And as a response to that, people hear that and they go, okay, well, I don't fuck with this. So maybe all of these people that are in positions of power that happen to be Jewish are actually bad. And they're, demonstrating dual loyalty, right? And that's how it builds. That's how anti-Semitism grows. And as a matter of fact, many people who were prominent neo-Nazis, been deplatformed on numerous occasions, have taken advantage of Israel's newfound unpopularity in the Western world to push for this idea that all of these Jews they're all single-mindedly in defense of
I'll,
Israel, and there are plenty of American Jews, there's plenty of American Zionists that will actually say this over and over again. That will teach people this falsehood, this idea that all Jews are single-mindedly invested in the development of the Greater Israel Project, when that's not the case. And
okay,
institutions
so
also do this as well, like synagogues that do settler fairs and advocacy organizations like the ADL that will then go around and go on television and say that all prominent critics of Israel are anti-Semitic.
okay, so I'm not plugged into social media as as well as you are, and I'm based in China. But I will tell you this: I noticed a distinct difference in social media postings pre-October 7th and post-October 7th. Pre-October 7th, there was a real focus on anti-racist thinking and behavior, right? Like, let's not conflate people into their racial groups and let's not discriminate against certain racial groups, okay? And that was pretty clear and stark on social media pre-October 7th. After October 7th, very rapidly, like you had all these people saying the Jews are responsible for everything. I'm like, Okay, first of all, why was this the sudden sea shift, right? This sudden shift in mentality. That's number one. Number two is, are people really that stupid they can't conflate that they have to conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism? I mean, I think it's okay to say like I disagree with Israel's policies, but then to say these Jews are controlling the American government, like these are two different things altogether.
First of all, there's a lot
And
of stupid people. Let me stop you there. And number two, there's a lot of, I mean, Elon Musk purchased Twitter. The algorithm, under the auspices of free speech, was tweaked at the behest of a lot of neo-Nazi sentiment. I mean, Adolf Hitler gifs were going viral almost on a weekly basis, almost on a daily basis. So there's definitely a little bit of algorithmic tweaking there as well that normalizes this kind of attitude. And Twitter is, I mean, the internet is, it always cross pollinates information from one social media platform to the next. So whatever happens on Twitter then makes its way to TikTok, then makes its way to all these other platforms. But the point I'm trying to make is that there is like a lot of people heard what prominent defenders of Israel were saying, and they learned the wrong lesson. Because prominent defenders of Israel, even to this day, will often conflate Judaism and Zionism, and will also defend Israel's actions by falsely painting its critics as anti-Semitic. And for the
I
longest
agree.
time, this anti-Semitism accusation held a lot of weight. Part of the reason why it held a lot of weight is because there are a lot of liberal advocacy organizations that were civil rights organizations or masqueraded as civil rights organizations, like the ADL, which in the past, in the 90s, was actually caught spying on Jewish Americans, Black Americans that were protesting apartheid in South Africa, and an organization that is backed by the Israeli Knesset. And the reason for why a lot of these pro-Israel organizations that masquerade as pro-Jewish organizations or Jewish advocacy organizations were allowed to operate on U.S. soil was not because of like some special secret magical mystical powers that Jews have, but because this was a reasonable way to stamp out any kind of opposition that Americans who believe in or learn liberal humanitarian values would actually be at odds with what Israel was doing if they learned what Israel was doing, right? So a good way to stamp that out, good way to stamp that dissent out was to immediately deplatform a lot of these organizations. But because it was in line with the American State Department's objectives of controlling this resource-rich region, the Middle East and North Africa, because that's what Israel's primary role was, and also was a reliable Cold War ally as well, these organizations were allowed to operate, just like AIPAC doesn't get hit with FARA restrictions on U.S. soil. But that's the exceptional nature of this relationship, only because Israel made itself a very valuable asset for the interests of American capital
I
that
completely
wanted to
agree.
dominate this oil
I
rich
completely
region.
agree. I completely agree with everything you said. Okay, like everything you said, I completely agree with. Behind Zionism is transnational capital. That's real power in the world. That's one. Number two
Okay.
is the people who really benefited from all this anti-Semitism are the Zionists, right? Because it gives them
I don't
cover.
necessarily think that they benefit from it. I think that, I mean, it's clearly failing at this point. So that's like,
I would say there are some clear benefits from all this a- anti Semitic sentiment online. Okay, number one is it gives cover to Israel, right? Because before people were focused on the genocide that Israel was committed, as they rightfully should be, but now it's like, oh, this is debate. Like, is your behavior anti-Semitic? Is this threatening Jewish people in America? Okay, so you're shifting the debate. That's one. Number two is it's causing cohesion
I know, but it doesn't
among.
work. That's the reason why I'm saying like there is no. It only worked when mainstream media was not as diverse. It only worked when there was an opportunity to gatekeep certain kinds of information to stop them from reaching
I
collective conscience.
I think it's
It
working.
doesn't work in the diverse landscape of the internet.
I think it's working for two demographics that are key to the Greater Israel Project. The first demographic are the Jewish people themselves. It's causing a lot of cohesion and unity among the Jewish people. Even those Jews who are secular and who have criticized Israel in the past, they recognize that it's very important to maintain unity. That's the first demographic. And the second demographic are the baby boomers. I think if you talk to the baby boomers and you pull the baby boomers,
This I don't agree with, and I'll tell you why.
okay,
Okay, number one, there is a massive generational divide, even amongst American Jews, as
yes,
far as the way that they understand Judaism and their connection to the state of Israel. It's not a
okay,
secret that there's an indoctrination project in the Western world for young Jews that live in the Western world. They go to Jewish school, and all matter of Jewish culture and Jewish identity is baked with this civic nationalist perspective, right?
yes,
That has changed dramatically. That's changed dramatically for younger Jews. As a matter of fact, part of the reason why a lot of these advocacy organizations target someone like myself is because I fight back against anti-Semitism quite vociferously, while also simultaneously am a prominent critic of the state of Israel. And a lot of these advocacy groups understand that someone like Nick Fuentes has no capacity to actually change the minds of young American Jews and break through the Zionist indoctrination, whereas someone like myself does have that capacity, which is why Jonathan Greenblatt will talk about me, and I'm sure he's going to have a field day with this conversation as well, for hours and hours on end on television, as opposed to talking about actual anti-Semites like Nick Fuentes or even Candace Owens, who will go back to this monolithic organized Jewry theory that I oppose. So that's number one. Number two, there's also the way that even boomers now see Israel, with the exception of some Christian evangelicals and maybe some of the older Zionist Jews. Most Americans and most people in the Western world, unlike the rest of the world, had never actually viewed Israel as a pariah state. The rest of the world always did, right? They understood that Israel was a settler colonial operation. It's a vestige of American empire. But now, even those in the Western world, given the barrage of heavy-handed accusations of anti-Semitism, demands of deplatforming, demands of cancellation, demands of like losing your job, and maybe even imprisonment in places like the UK, have created tremendous enmity towards the nation state of Israel. So I think Israel got far too comfortable in the last multiple decades, where it was where it had the capacity to influence domestic policy, and it thought that it could continue operating in the ways that it does in the Western world, and it has actually backfired spectacularly, which is also the reason why you're seeing a lot of Western governments take a much more heavy-handed approach in combating any kind of criticism of Israel in ways that we thought previously were impossible to govern around. They've overplayed their hand. And so I don't think that I think that Israel's popularity has actually gone down. It hasn't gone up. And it's actually going to have a devastating consequence for the Zionist project in the next decade.
okay. So I agree with everything you said. Okay, absolutely, like 100%. Every sentence you said. Where you and I would disagree is, I would say that we still think of the Western world as democratic, and I would say that's no longer true. It's become an oligarchy, where only where only minority control all the wealth, all the power. So as long as the Zionists are able to appeal to a certain segment of the population, the baby boomers, basically, and not even all the baby boomers. I'm talking like, the 10 to 20% of the baby boomers who control all the power and the wealth in the world. They're still able to carry through their agenda. Okay, an example I will use is this: Larry Ellison and his son. They spent billions of dollars taking over CBS and CNN, and they've installed Barry Weiss. And all the reporting is that Barry Weiss is ruining both, she's ruined CBS News, right? And she'll probably ruin CNN as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like these guys, the Ellisons, they're not dumb guys. Why would they spend all this money taking over CBS News and CNN and installing Barry Weiss, who is not very popular among reporters?
In order to defend Donald Trump and also defend Israel's interests, like quite deliberately, yes.
Right, and so I would say, and it works, because really in America
I don't
right
think it
now,
works. I don't think it works. It doesn't work because there's already a crisis in confidence in mainstream outlets already. That's part of the reason why people are actually much more people are approaching this issue much differently. This crisis
How?
has been brewing. There's a legitimacy crisis in mainstream media. It's been brewing since the Iraq War, when New York Times and all these other outlets, at the behest of the American State Department, lied to the American people, told them that there were WMDs, we had to go to war. It created a massive fissure in the way that Americans saw mainstream outlets. Then during COVID, there were a lot of people who did not agree with the perspective of epidemiologists, and the media was trying to do their very best for the public good. So in that instance, they weren't literally lying to the American public. They were just doing their very best. They were, operating as the fourth estate. That still created a massive fissure. And I think that the last 3 years, the way that mainstream outlets covered this genocide versus the way that people could see this genocide unfold in real life in front of their eyes on social media also increased that division, and it almost collapsed the legitimacy that people have for mainstream media in its entirety. So now this purchase of CBS or the purchase of TikTok and all the algorithmic gaming is not going to be able to combat the enmity that people have towards Israel.
Okay, so let's talk about Thomas Massie, right? This is an incumbent who is very popular, and who has done a lot for his constituents. And three billionaires, Miriam Adelson, Paul Singer, John Paulson, they spent about like $30 million to $35 million. And there's only one demographic that opposed Thomas Massie, and it's the baby boomers. So you would think, just given this, you would think Thomas Massie would win the primary easily, right? And I actually thought that he would win the primary easily, yet he lost by 10 points.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cult. Republicans are a straight up cult. They're unbelievably cult-like. Donald Trump hates Thomas Massie because Thomas Massie does the Epstein files. Thomas Massie's a major critic of Israel. Donald Trump wants to reassert his influence over the party. He puts Thomas Massie in the crosshairs. There's also $35 million in ad spend. And yes, baby boomers do watch television, and they are very malleable. And all of a sudden, Thomas Massie is eliminated, right?
Right. And I would say Washington, D.C., it's a bubble right now where the people there basically are aligned on many big topics, right? Especially Israel. Section 219 of the National Defense Authorization Act, it's passed, and now you will see a slow merger of these two militaries, right? Israel and the United States. And they're doing this, as you point out, because like they need a pit bull, they need Israel in order to secure American interests in the Middle East. And this is a way to circumvent congressional oversight, right? So I'm saying, like, given these trends, given what happened to Thomas Massie, given the NDAA, given the fact that Washington is essentially a bubble that they all think alike, whether it's Democrat or Republican, like look at what Chuck Schumer has said about Israel, right? What reason do we have to be optimistic that there is going to be a turning of the tide against Israel?
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with what I do as my work, aside from commentary, but we are electing a lot of anti-Zionists into office from the Democratic Party side, and we've overcome tremendous amounts of media spend coming from AIPAC and AIPAC subsidiary shell corporations in all of the races that I've been involved in thus far. And yet, within the Democratic Party, because there is no similar cult-like attitude that the Republicans have, the Democratic Party's base of support is actually far more invested, given that there's plenty of readily available public polling on the issue. There is a lot of appetite for anti-Zionist, anti-Israel sentiment within the Democratic Party, which is precisely the reason why, in spite of the millions of dollars in ad spend within the Democratic primary system, prominent critics of Israel are getting elected. It's actually created a massive crisis within Washington, D.C. They're constantly talking about how they have to do away with this democratic socialist movement in their ranks. I don't think it's entirely about Israel, of course, but that's just one reason for why. That's one reason for why there's so much anger and resentment coming from DC. But at the end of the day, if Israel was this all-controlling entity, or if there was any sort of like cult that was gaming the system behind closed doors, then this kind of stuff would not happen. It would not happen in any way, shape, or form. People would just end up mysteriously losing these sorts of elections and whatnot, and there wouldn't be any sort of like established movement that's harnessing the current anger and resentment people have with the way that Washington D.C. Is operating in line with Israel's interests.
What do you think of the 2016 Democratic primary, the 2020 Democratic primary, where Bernie Sanders was clearly going to win the nomination, and in both instances, he was railroaded by the Democratic Party establishment, right? And we know in 2016, because of the leaked emails, right, where the Democratic Party establishment was conspiring
I mean,
against
they did
Bernie
it
Sanders.
openly
And
too.
in
They did it by way of
2020,
media as well.
and in 2020, the same thing happened where Bernie Sanders had won Nevada, and he was clearly going to win the nomination because there was so much energy and organization behind him. And then Super Tuesday, they all rallied behind Biden. And like 2 months prior, the Democratic Party establishment was like, he can't possibly win, so we need either Pete Buttigieg or Kamala Harris.
Yeah, boomers
Right? I
are
mean, like,
high propensity voters. They vote in the primaries, and they had they are slammed to their TVs, and they were much more malleable, much more persuadable about the electability argument. That's actually a key difference in this election cycle right now. We don't know where this will go, and I'm sure that the Democratic Party will do everything in its power to make sure that the establishment continues to maintain its grip on power. But this kind of deliberate sabotage that was implemented in the DNC system in 2016 and 2020 is going to be a much more difficult terrain for the Democrats to put forth, given that there is, one, a lot more diversity in people's media diets, a lot more interest in actually putting people into positions of power that will, combat the relationship, the pre-existing relationship that America has with Israel, and we're just better organized this time around as a consequence of all of those failures that we went through in the last 10 years, in the last decade. And I think that is the reason why it's very different this time around, hopefully. There could still be failure at the end of the day, but, we're just going to continue organizing around it.
I want to go back to 2020 and look at the sort of like conspiracy against Bernie Sanders, okay? Because like let's look at what happened, okay? So Bernie Sanders had already won Nevada by a landslide, okay? And then what happened was a series of events. First of all, Barack Obama did a call in to a radio show in South Carolina. James Clyburn then endorsed Biden. Then the nominees started to drop out. Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, they all dropped out together. And what's really important is Elizabeth Warren stayed in the race, thus splitting the left vote, right? And when people were like, like Elizabeth, like I thought Bernie and you were friends. Like, why are you staying in the race?
Well,
and
I mean, we knew
Elizabeth
that wasn't the case, but
exactly, right? So I'm saying like there's massive coordination behind the scenes, right? You need someone like Barack Obama in order to make all this happen. So given that Barack Obama sabotaged Bernie Sanders in 2020, and given the fact that Barack Obama still remains the most popular Democrat in the United States right now, he's still the most powerful Democrat in the United States right now, what makes you think he won't do this again?
A couple reasons. One, it depends. There are very popular figures now on the left, and their popularity is only going to continue growing. That could potentially happen. That could potentially happen where Barack Obama could move in at the last second and turn around and try to game out the system again. I just don't think that the infrastructure there remains, because the appetite from the base of support is very different. Like the appetite from the base of the Democratic Party, the high propensity voters that comprise like the backbone of the primary system, they do not believe in the electability arguments that was presented by mainstream media any longer. That's the only reason. I don't think if Barack Obama intercepted these current primary races, for example, if he were to come in and say you have to vote for this person over this other person, I don't know if he would have the same level of influence capabilities. Because there are other figures that are also very popular within the movement, and there are also other organizations that are growing in power that are not that are not inside of the Democratic Party. They're not accountable to the party bosses, and there is a lot more outside pressure, and people are a lot more aware of the things that took place or the decisions that they made. I talked to a lot of boomers. If you were to ask a lot of boomers, many of them say they voted for Hillary Clinton. They thought Bernie was bad. They thought he was a spoiler. They no longer believe that. They understand that they were wrong about that assessment. And I get a lot of confidence from those conversations that I have with people, and I get a lot of confidence from these elections that I'm seeing, where a lot of people over the age of 65 are voting for random, unknown, very young candidates, Democratic Socialists. And these are high propensity voters that are lifelong Democrats.
What do you think of Tucker Carlson and MTG? Because these are both extremely anti-war people who have basically abandoned the Republican Party because they're anti-war. Like, how? I mean, how would you perceive these two people in particular?
I think Tucker Carlson is very connected to JD Vance and Peter Thiel, and therefore he's garnering a lot of legitimacy in the anti-war space. And there are plenty of people who actually believe him and think he's a sincere voice. And he does make a very convincing case in that front, especially against Israel. And regardless of what he is saying, I still think that his ultimate ambition is to either take that legitimacy and lend it to JD Vance, or maybe even take that legitimacy into going through with his own ambitions of higher office and maybe even run for president. That's what I think. But I don't think it's like a real. I mean, I think it's ultimately going to be him lending that credence to JD Vance. That's what I think. And I don't think JD Vance is actually a critic of Israel in any way, shape, or form. I think he's just performing a role for Peter Thiel.
And how about MTG?
I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is just, I mean, she's a little bit of a kook. She's a little bit of a crank. Here's the thing. I think both Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene do sincerely think that the violence that they saw in Gaza is unconscionable. I do think that. Having said that, however, I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene has like any sort of real constituency, because she no longer she abandoned her post, she abandoned the party, and she lost whatever power she could have potentially had as a reliable vote, for example. She probably didn't want to get primaried by way of Thomas Massie. There's a very high likelihood that would have happened to her, but still, she would have still been able to be a vote and a voice before she got primaried. So I don't think she should have retired. But I don't know where she goes from this point on. Maybe in independent media, somewhere like that. But ultimately, I don't think she's like a significant force in American politics any longer.
And do you think that after the midterms, there might be a prominent anti-war caucus emerging in Congress that tries to get the United States out of this silly war?
Yes, but I don't think it'll be Republicans. Well, it could be Republicans because lame duck, Trump's unpopularity skyrockets after the midterm defeats. He's not able to achieve the electoral gaming that he wants to set up, abolishing vote by mail, things like that. And therefore, the sequence of midterm defeats cause the party bosses to sour. This happened last time when Donald Trump was in power as well. And then eventually they will look for a new leader in the party to take over the role of Donald Trump. That's what I think is going to happen. And therefore, because he's losing his legitimacy, a lot of careerist politicians, even on the Republican side, will most likely try to coalesce around an anti-war force, recognizing that the attitude has shifted dramatically in that direction. And there's no cult-like figure that is all-powerful that can muster up the forces.
So you would know a lot better than I do, but I would guess that for the midterms, the Democrats are going to promote a lot of blue dog candidates.
Of course.
Are you concerned at all? Are you concerned at all about that?
I mean, that's just what they do. They've done that every midterm. They will always promote the most conservative Democrats they possibly can.
In which case, it's possible, like after the midterms, there might be even more pressure from Congress to expand this war. Do you think that that's a possibility?
There's always a possibility, yeah.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, in the interest of making sure that we avoid that reality, I'm trying to get as many anti-war voices elected as possible right now. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. There's still going to be a lot larger of a force within the Democratic Party that will still most likely maintain a posture, a militant posture. But that only heightens the contradictions. Just like Israel overplaying its hand and constantly hitting the anti-Semitism button and demanding that governments like the UK start punishing people for being outspoken critics of Israel frustrates a lot of people. That tension keeps bubbling up and it has to go somewhere. You have to release a pressure valve. And democracy is supposed to be that pressure valve. If the Western world no longer has any confidence in democracy and the democratic process, which I agree with you, I think it is an oligarchy. I don't think it's a real democratic process regardless. But once it gets to that point, changes will be inevitable. That's it. And I think people, powerful interests of capital, will want to maintain a level of stability. They can make money in crisis. They can make money through volatility. But too much instability and too much volatility, all of a sudden they're not making money. Then it becomes unpredictable. So in an effort to avoid that, they will have to concede. That's what I think.
Well, I mean, I'm rooting for you, and I really hope that there could be a revolution within the Democratic Party that brings in young, fresh voices such as Madani, such as yourself, because this is really the best hope for America right now. The Republican Party has become, as you point out, a cult, and so really the best hope right now is that the Democratic Party becomes the anti-war, pro-worker faction in America again.
All right. Well, Professor Jiang, thank you so much for coming on. I got to go. I have a photo shoot that I have to attend.
Okay. Well, thanks so much. Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a good one. Bye. Wow. That was a journey and a half. How did you guys feel about that? I mean, that went off the rails with the wild conspiracies in between. And then we arrived at a decent landing pad, I think. Never do that to us again. I can't believe you didn't ask him about spirit cooking. Please have him as a regular guest. He is an interesting, he's a roller coaster. We did see the same thing. We did see the same thing happen. He'll have like decent analysis and then he'll package it up with like just wild stuff. We can see the future for a bit, I think. Okay. If you said half of what he said himself, you would have been cooked years ago, Lamau. I mean, yeah, I don't believe any of that. Why do you think he does that? I have no idea. I thought I could dive into it a little bit further, but anytime we tried to understand where he was coming from, it would go into like crazy places. Anyway, all right, everybody, love you all, and I will see you tomorrow. Hasan Reactions, one of the best ones in the React channel.